As y'all can see, we got this 5.7 Hemi all back together. Head gaskets, heads, intake, exhaust, all that stuff replaced. New lifters and cams, so they have no MDS anymore. This thing will run V8 all the time. Now, part of that is tuning it so the computer's not trying to shut off cylinders that won't shut off. And with that, this being a 2016, the kit that I had the owner buy comes with a unlocked PCM. So you have to actually send your PCM to be unlocked and you get one that's unlocked, something like that. I didn't realize that was part of it. I thought you were paying for the tuner that could unlock it and tune it. But no, it will not let me tune this thing. I got the Diablo tuner in there trying to turn off the MDS, and because of the year this thing is, it has a locked PCM, which I believe is this guy right here. I'm far from an electrician, and these computers and new stuff, that was one thing I was not familiar with. So I got carbureted trucks all around me, except for this diesel here, which is a whole nother can of worms. But this thing is not ready to be driven down the road because I cannot tune it. Here's another look at our old cam. Doesn't look too bad, just used. And then you can see the new one here, part of our MDS delete kit. I'm gonna go ahead and stick that in there. I'm gonna put some of this Lucas assembly lube on it to make sure we don't have, a dry metal to metal contact in there. Make it easier to install as well as the first start. All right, let's see if we can get this thing started. Getting too short. There we go. So got that installed. It's already should be in the right spot too, and then I'll put that plate back on there, the 4 bolts. We'll mess with this chain again. Gotta love when you climb in the truck, you got your Loctite, your bolt, your torque wrench, your socket, everything but the actual part you're about to install. Now I gotta climb back out of here. Before I try to turn this thing without tension on this chain, I want to put the tension back on it and then I'm going to torque it. I just feel better about doing it that way. I don't know why. Let me know what y'all think. So I'll pull this out, looking down and make sure the chain is still where it belongs on the bottom. Tight. Okay. This gets torqued to 72 foot-pounds. Right now I'm working on getting this exhaust manifold off. This is another common place for noise on these. You get the Hemi tick from just the exhaust. And I've gotten all these bolts broken loose. Some of them are like a bolt with a stud combo where it has the heat shield attached. And one of those did break right here. Which is pretty common. On the back side here seems to be hotter and those break all the time, so I'm going to have to drill that one out. A little bit annoying, but got the rest of them out with some coil, and hopefully I can have better luck on the next one. too bad. Well, my luck's definitely not any better on this side because this one here is already broken. The bolt that holds on the heat shield and the actual exhaust manifold here is broken. So that was definitely ticking, rattling, making some noise on startup. So that may have been our whole problem. And now we're fixing this and doing the MDS delete. New lifters, cam, everything. This thing should be right for a while. My extractor set is not doing much on this really hard bolt, and I think I'm gonna weld it. I'm gonna weld a nut on it like I've seen in another video. I'm gonna try do a little, tack weld here and there, see how that goes, and then weld a nut on it, try to spin it off that way. Getting somewhere. These bolts love that heat. Get a nut on the end of there and that heat from the weld. Get it out while it's hot. I'm talking like I've done this before. I haven't worked on an engine before, but I have welded some broken bolts before. I welded it a little crooked, but it's coming out. Yeah, check that out. Not too bad. So another thing I figured out with this, having a broken bolt, needing to replace that bolt obviously to get the exhaust manifold back on there, I checked my box of parts for this because it came with new exhaust manifold gaskets and pretty much everything you need for this kit. A lot of new bolts for the heads, but no new bolts for the manifold, which these always break. These are, one of them was broken before I touched it, the other one broke as soon as I breathed on it. So I'm surprised it didn't come with the kit. But I am very lucky today. This rusty bolt here, I don't know what lighting's best for y'all to see that, holds on the exhaust manifold to the head. So this is what the bolt looks like for that. I don't have any new ones. Some of them also have a stud sticking out for you to attach the heat shields, which are kind of a pain in the rear, and you can see how they get stuck together like that when it snaps. But what I do have, if not more of these, is this bolt that looks identical and is the same threads. I've actually screwed one of these in. It seems to be exactly the same. Let me get it lined up. It's the same size too. So this bolt that holds on the head, one of many, there's a bunch of big ones, but then the little bolts that go right here are like this. And there are new ones of those. So I have a bunch of extra of this kind of bolt that should go in. It has a slightly different tip, but the threads seem to be the same. Let's see if I can lock them into each other. You can kind of see that. I don't know if this is a good test or not, but let's see. I'll screw this in. This is the old one. That's an exhaust bolt for sure. It's already getting tight. And then this is a manifold to the block bolt. And you can see, come on, don't fail me now. Don't make a liar out of me. We've got the same kind of threads happening there. So I'm pretty optimistic that I can use bolts that will be left over from the ones that are getting replaced to hold the head to the block, and I'll be in good shape. I only need to have one of these on each head because the rear most bolt has broken on both of them. Seems to be a common failure point, a lot of heat. So I'm gonna see if that works. I'm optimistic. Otherwise, this thing ain't getting done anytime soon because I can't put it back together until we get a head bolt replacement, or at least I could do that later through the wheel well, which means taking more stuff off. So I'm gonna try to get this done as is. Feeling pretty excited that it's the same kind of bolts it goes into the same head. It's just on the opposite side. So I'm not super shocked, but my luck, usually there's like 7 different size heads of bolts, and they're all different lengths and threads and everything. And these are pretty darn close. And I think the same threads and length. So feeling pretty good about that. Y'all let me know what you think. Maybe it won't break as easily as the ones in there too. Alright, so on the first one, welding a nut to it went pretty well. Didn't film it the best. I can't weld on camera, obviously, because I couldn't weld the second nut to the other head, because the same bolt broke on each side of the engine. And now you can see I just welded a bunch onto it and then grabbed onto it with the vice grip. So there we go, got it out. Feeling pretty good about that. So I'm going to clean this up, get a new gasket on there, reinstall the exhaust manifold, and get this thing ready to go. Also doing spark plugs while I'm at it, because they're right here and easy to get to for once. 2 per cylinder on this thing. You can see that. So you can see there's some buildup on them. Look a little bit tired. The top side looks clean because they're down sealed by the coil, but yeah, these definitely have some miles on them. I don't know how well that's focusing. And you can see this is a NGK LZFR5CI. So I got the exact same ones. So feeling good about that. You can see what it's supposed to look like. I'm going to check the gap, what it's supposed to be, make sure they're set properly, and get these all swapped out. New spark plugs are in. Gap's been checked. They're all torqued to 20 foot-pounds. And I need to do that to the other head. I already did the exhaust gasket on the other head and didn't do the spark plugs yet, so got to finish up the exhaust on this one and the spark plugs on that one, and then figure out what I'm doing next, whether it's the MDS delete parts for the solenoids or putting the heads back on and then doing that. Got to figure out exactly what's next, but getting there slowly but surely. Also, I'm gonna have to put the lifters in before I put the heads in and clean up the cylinder area from debris and the mating surface, so a couple more things to do. After finishing up the heads, the spark plugs, and the exhaust manifolds on them, I've now moved over to the MDS delete plugs for where the solenoids went. So let me show you a few tips for that. We'll keep going with basically the last couple parts we need to swap out, the lifters, and start putting this thing back together. I've already got the cam and timing and all done, but a few things left on the engine to put back together, obviously, and then all the stuff that was in the way, fans, AC compressor, alternator, all that stuff has to go back together. So quite a bit of work. I've been doing this every night after work all week since Monday. Today is Thursday, so it's been an all week process, and I got parts everywhere still. So let's see if we can get this thing back together. As you can see from the holes in the block, I've got those solenoids out. You can see the plugs for them, the connectors. The red part just slides back, and then you can press on it right here towards the cable side of it, and those come off pretty easily. The issue is getting these guys out. So I've had some tips, and I thought with those tips I could be better than everyone else and not break them, but these do break. So I'll put my light right here. You can see here's one that did not break, and it's kind of half broken, but this is what the whole solenoid looks like that shuts off the cylinders, and this is what it looks like if you break it in half. My advice, just break it in half. Just rip that sucker off, because it's going to break regardless. The only one that did not break was the one that I just did not care about and tried to yeet it off, and then it came off. So I was real careful with all these, and they broke. So what you do when they break, when you have this plastic piece stuck flush with the block, you can screw some kind of screw into it and then pry it off. And that's what I did exactly. Used that tool there, self-tapper, and got them all out that way pretty quickly. So just go ahead and yeet them all off of there, and don't even worry about hurting them, because they're not going back in. And then you can put in the new plugs that don't have any, you know, electrical connector or anything on it. So the connectors will just be chilling in here. They still stay plugged in because of this one connector has to stay plugged in for some sensor. So I'm gonna get these back in, reinstall them with the same bolts, and I'll show you a couple tips for these also. All right, so here's the first one. I'm giving you tips like I've done this before, but I have not. So these are currently dry O-rings, but there's oil down in there. My thought is the oil down in there will keep them from rolling or tearing, and too much oil or the wrong kind of stuff could make it leak. So I'm just going to put them in dry and rely on that little bit of oil that's down in there to lubricate them. So let me know what y'all think about that. And then the other thing is this post on the top of it. The light might be too intense for y'all, I don't know. There's a post on top that is a 1/4 inch, so any 1/4 inch drive socket will do, allegedly. Yep, there you go. So that's sitting on there now, and now I can tap it in with a little bit of support with a rubber mallet, ideally, and see how that goes. So let me try to just do that very gingerly until the metal is flush. Here I don't want to use the actual bolt to tighten it down because it'll go in crooked. So this is how you put it in straight. Yep, and there's my tip for that. And then same hardware goes in there. And I stole this tip off of some Jeep guy's YouTube video. I've seen a million YouTube videos about all these things every step of the way. Make sure I don't mess it up because other people have done this before, so why should I figure it out the hard way? Those are all installed using that method. The ones over here have this post for this little wire connector to hold on to, keep everything straight, and then you just tuck the connectors down so they don't get in the way of the intake up here. But use that process. I did hit them a little harder with the rubber mallet off camera to get it to fully seat, but you're not going to hurt it with the rubber mallet and that socket on there like that. So that went pretty well. And on to the next thing. I probably need to do either the lifters and cover up this area and clean up the mating surface, or vice versa, but I don't want to get any of this gunk down in here. And I'm going to shop back up a little bit anything I can, which I already did in the middle here, but just try to minimize the debris and get a nice clean surface for the head gaskets and get this thing ready to go back together. How many times have I said get this thing back together so far in this series? Like, let's just get this thing back together, all right? Let's just do it. Let's just put it back together. I mean, it's just an engine, head gaskets and stuff. How hard could it be? Another thing that needs to happen is get this front section back on. I want to make sure I have enough room, so I probably won't put anything else on, but I might go ahead and put that front section on and not the water pump yet, just so that that's all protected from any debris before I clean up the surface. So let me verify with everybody else's process, but I think that might be what I do next. I was skeptical of this technique I saw when I was having issues getting this crankshaft seal off. I was beating on it, prying on it, had a socket that was bigger, hammering on it from the backside, and I could not get it out until I drilled self-tapping screw into it, being careful not to damage the actual casing, and then pried it off with a pry bar. I tried just the pry bar in here, had no luck. Thing did not budge at all. It was like cooked in there, old hot oil. But as soon as I did this, it came out in about 30 seconds of wiggling on it. So that is the trick. Once you have this thing off of here, if you're replacing this crankshaft seal, which I'd recommend, it comes with the delete kit. And you can see this one was a little cooked and brittle. As soon as I started working on it, it just came apart, and also took some damage right there. So feeling pretty good about getting that out now. I wanted to share that that trick did work that I saw on YouTube. Just screwed right into it carefully and got it out that way. Got the new seal fully installed and made sure that was nice and flush there. I may have mentioned that I'm not removing the oil pan for this project. However, that is typically part of this process, but I was able to retain the timing chain with a bungee cord and avoid that, and I got the timing chain and everything back on and timing set. So still using the same oil pan gasket down there at the bottom, and because of that I've decided to put some RTV black gasket maker down there at the bottom to reapply that seal and prevent some leaks there. So y'all stay tuned, see how that turns out for us. Hopefully we don't get any leaks. I'm looking at this and I think that I need to put the head on before this. So that's upsetting. We'll see how that unfolds. So I've got the front cover plate on here. I don't know if that's going to be in my way or not yet, but I know these lifters need to go in. I want to go ahead and get that done. As far as I can tell, they're all the same now that we don't have the MDS anymore. They have all the same part number on them, and all the brackets look the same, so we'll see if that's right. And I've excessively lubed these up with engine assembly lube, and they were pretty well lubricated out of the box as well. So I'm going to stick these in here, see how that goes. It looks like the bolt goes on the top of it, so see if these want to stay in place. You may be able to hear the laughter of women in the background. My wife's got a bunch of friends over around the fire pit. I might need a chrome 8mm for this, a skinnier one. I just found some nasty coolant like gunk back here, so I'm gonna be getting rid of that. Just after midnight on Friday night, started this like a week ago. Nearly there though. We got the head gasket surface cleaned up on the block side. Still need to do the same thing on the heads and get that head gasket set in place there and install those. Hopefully the heads will fit around this front plate for the water pump and all that stuff. Because I wanted to go ahead and get that on there so I wasn't like rubbing up against and kicking the timing chain or anything like that. So if I have to take it back off, not the end of the world, but I did put some gasket maker on there, some RTV, so I have to redo that, but not too big of a deal. We'll see. But I got those bolts in on the bottom side of the oil pan. I need to snug those down once I tighten everything else up, but I want to check these heads first tomorrow on Saturday, see if we can get those in there and keep rolling with it. But we have the new cam, the new lifters installed, so feeling really good about the progress so far. After cleaning up the block's head surface there, I've put the head gasket on. It has two little studs that it can rest on. You can put these on backwards if you're not careful, so make sure you look at the little labels on it. It says top, which is really on the bottom, but it's just this side up basically, and then it also has a R and a L for left and right, and it's as if you're driving the truck. So I'm looking at my left hand is actually the right, but that's if you're driving the truck facing this way, it would be left and right. So got those sitting there. Now I'm cleaning up the surface of the heads themselves. You can see I've started working on this side of this one, and you can kind of see what that looks like beforehand. Pretty oily and everything. Tipping this upside down, a lot of oil has dripped out of it, so I'm going to try to get all the oil and everything out, so as I'm actually installing it, it's not dripping down on the gasket and causing any oil in between or making it leak, because this thing definitely was leaking before. I believe he had some maintenance done 5 years ago, he said. Something with the MDS, but they reinstalled the MDS stuff. So I don't know if it's already had this work done when they didn't do the leak kit. It's all been apart and they didn't seal it up right. I don't know how in-depth they went with it before, but he did have some work done to this, and the gaskets have failed since then. And here we are, a bunch of leaks. So gonna be really careful, taking my time, cleaning this up, trying to make it as clean as possible, get these gaskets on here, make sure I follow the torque sequence and get them nicely seated on. This is a big deal. I mean, it's a head gasket. Everybody knows blown head gasket or leaking head gasket is a huge job, and I'm right in the middle of it, trying to make sure I put that part on right so we don't have more issues down the road. You can put it in the trash. This isn't trash. Look, there's trash right there. Snack time in the shop. Back in the truck, I've got the mating surface all cleaned up here to my satisfaction, and making sure the gasket's still nice and clean here. I'm gonna have to push this wire bundle out of the way as I do this and set it on the dowel pins, and try to stick a bolt in the middle of it. I got one with some blue Loctite on it ready to go, and see if I can get this in here. I'm gonna have to flip this thing over, but I didn't want to lay it back down on that clean surface, So I gotta try to flip it and put it right on there. It's pretty heavy, so wish me luck. Got one pin in. Let's see, something might be in the way. There it goes. Nice positive lock into place. I'm gonna stick a bolt in it, lock tight on it, keep a hold of it. There we go. So you can see the intake ports sticking up. So the intake all goes right here, and the exhaust is down there. We'll have to bolt that back up. All this stuff's in the way, but got it done. Feeling good about that. Now, once this one's snug down, we got to see, can I get the other one in here with all this that I put in my own way. This looks like it's going to be in the way, but I'm optimistic because I don't want to have to redo my gasket maker down at the bottom where I reinstalled this kind of hand tight. So got to clean up the other one, get that in here, but this one went in pretty good. Fun fact, Google says don't use blue Loctite on this, don't use any Loctite, because the time it takes to torque these down properly, the Loctite will already have set, and then it'll make it to where you don't actually tighten them down in the proper way. So I'm gonna not do that. I'm gonna clean off the ones I put in there and not do that on the rest. The ones I took out didn't have it, and I started to think maybe that's for a reason, so looked it up. Yeah, don't use Loctite. They're supposed to be nice and, you know, easily set in there. Even a little bit of oil on them is not bad, so they can get tight enough without that Loctite like making a bond and holding it in the middle of your torquing sequence, because you do a little bit of torque at a time. So just wanted to clarify that. I'm gonna go ahead and continue taking these out and putting the other ones in without Loctite, but fun fact there, normally I would think it's gonna need some Loctite, but I just had a feeling after I did the first couple that something wasn't right. So make sure you're checking every torque spec every step of the way. And that one just seemed like common sense, but common sense would say do Loctite, and actually you're not supposed to. So that's not what I'm gonna do. Now I've got all the passenger side header bolts snug down, even just snugging them like finger tight. I started in the center and then worked my way kind of opposite from the center out. So I did here, then like here, there, all the way to the last ones are the front and the back. That way you don't end up with like a gap in the, the flat gasket there. You don't want it to be like pinched somewhere. You want it to kind of spread out like there's a bubble in there. You want it to be completely flat, if that makes sense. So the same thing, putting these in, I did the middle one first, then these two, and then these here, and they're just barely snug. I'll go back and torque them the same time I do the other ones. I'm saying that so I don't forget to do it, but I'm gonna go back and torque all these the same to the torque wrench. I think it's 20 foot-pounds first, I'll verify, and then you do like 40 on up to the final torque. There's a few stages. That way it's nice and evenly pressed down from the center out, so that way you don't have a gap in the middle. So see how that goes. Hopefully that was all that was wrong last time and why I started having leaks, which I think actually came from even higher up on the valve covers. So hopefully this thing goes back together nicely without leaks. So let's get the other side cleaned up, installed, and snugged down. For these head bolts, you start with the center two and work your way out. 25 foot-pounds is the first torque you do, and then you go back and do 40, and then you do a 90-degree turn after that. I had to charge my Go Slow camera for a little bit. That thing was starting to flicker. It does that when it gets like half battery or less, so that's really annoying. But I'm back out here after I've torqued everything, or I've got the camera back with me at least. I've been out here a while, but I've got all the head bolts tightened down using the sequence for that, where you start in the middle and you do like 20 foot-pounds, work your way out, get them all there, and then you do 40 foot-pounds, working your way out from the middle again, and then ultimately you do another 90 degrees with it there, which ends up being around 95 foot-pounds, more or less. But anyway, got that all seated properly, feeling really good about that. Hopefully everything's good there. Also, you have these smaller bolts here that are like 15 and then 25 foot-pounds, starting from the middle, working your way out again. So got that all in place there. Now I'm working on getting the push rods in here, and I noticed as I was cleaning these up and getting them on the paper all nice here, one side of the engine was cleaner than the other. Can y'all see that? So I've got some push rods are super dirty, some are super clean, and that could have been random. But then if you see, are these rocker arms? That's what I have been thinking about calling them, but I don't even know really what these are called. But these little assemblies here, these two are clean, which I kept them all together. This is driver's, you know, side, and then it goes all the way to passenger side. So these were in the middle here, and you can see these two are cleaner than these two. So I'm wondering why, because the oil leak was on the driver's side, but is it because the driver's side's cleaner due to the fresh oil being added to the driver's side and the oil fill, you know, funnel there? Why would one side be cleaner than the other? Let me know what y'all think. Did one get lower on oil and burn up? I really don't know. Thought that was interesting. But they all seem to be equally in good shape. It's just some have like gunky oil stuck to them more than the other side. So interesting there, to say the least. But I'm gonna try to get these in here. You can see this thing starting to look like an engine again. Really excited to get it done and hear it run again, and hopefully everything will stay in one piece and not leak. All this is upside down right now, so I'm gonna have to flip it around. Stuff is in the way. Get out of my way. Alright, so I'm gonna double check that push rods feel like they're in the right spot. Basically like popping them off center and then back to center. And then I need to line up the bolt holes, the little arms on the spring and on the push rod all at the same time, utilizing 7 hands minimum. Alright, I ended up torquing those to 20 foot-pounds and then putting in the intake push rods now. Doesn't feel right. There we go. Push the lifter down in there a little bit. Now this one goes like this. It's kind of backwards from the other one. And again, you're lining up bolts, the springs, and the push rods all at the same time. It does say intake on it with an I. That kind of helps you keep from mixing them up, at least. Where am I looking at? Oh yeah, see? That's out. And that's in. Okay, that's nice. Mirror helps for sure. All these torqued, that went pretty good. Now the other side has this giant wiring harness in the way, so we'll see how that goes. But same process over there, and then the next thing would be the valve cover with new gaskets and all that. And there's a bunch of connectors and stuff I gotta watch out for with that. Clean the surface up again. Eventually the intake's gonna go on. All new gaskets, spark plugs are already in, coil packs. So kind of chipping away at the big stuff, and then it'll all just be plugging in the fuel line and connectors, and then the front stuff that I can't really fit in here because I'm in the way. I believe I found his oil leak. This thing was leaking a ton on the driver's side and was coming from pretty high up on the motor. You can see here, this seal may have gotten stuck a little bit and ripped out when I was removing it, but if you notice, that's where all the oil seems to be coming from. And this whole area is super oily, caked up. So I'm pretty sure this was installed with that a little bit out of whack, and they tightened it down like that, and that's where it started leaking from. Took it a while, took it a few years apparently, since he had some work done on it, but you can see there's a little bit of dirt and stuff from the outside on this one, the one that wasn't like that, but then this one's got shiny oil all the way around it pretty much. So I think this was the problem why this thing started leaking so badly, started having issues, was this gasket right here. You can kind of see how it has that dirt line on it from where it was outside of its normal spot. So I'm gonna try to make sure that's nice and cleaned up and properly installed this time, so this thing does not give him those troubles. So I'm gonna go ahead and yank these out. It's getting late. It's, let's see, a little bit after midnight, but I want to get these on at least. This would be a nice stopping point, I think, to have these covers on there with all the new gaskets. So that's where I'm gonna try to get to tonight. Thought this part was pretty satisfying. You know, I can't say nothing about the guy that installed this valve cover the last time, because that same spot fought me 4 times. I had to check it with the mirror and the flashlight in order to get it. It was catching on basically like the bolts for what we just installed here for the push rods and everything. So finally got enough slack in the fuel line and the AC lines and everything to get it in there. But if I didn't know to look for that, I probably would have done the same thing. That side's a lot easier. Let's see if it actually came out good. Well, boys, it's 2 o'clock in the morning. My wife's probably thinking,
it is 2 o'clock in the fucking morning. I think it's time you got your fucking ass in the bed. That's where I'm wanting to go.
And I'm thinking, there's 2 things I've learned from this. One, Dodge uses plastic on the hottest parts of the vehicle, the engine. Valve covers, just too much plastic. I'm not a fan of the plastic. Intake, all that, a lot of plastic. The other thing is you can do it right or you can do it twice. So I'm really hoping that I'm doing this right. I'm taking my time, over a week into it now, but every little step I'm like, you know what, let me double check. I'm watching a video, I'm looking it up, Googling different things. Like I almost used blue Loctite, which apparently is a no bueno situation because that messes up you're actually getting it to the right torque. So things like that I'm figuring out as I go, but trying to do this the best I can. Also because the owner of this truck is a mountain of a man that knows his way around a gun, and I don't want to be on his bad side. So that, and he's also related to my food that I eat, so I don't want to have any issues with him in the future, and I don't want to have to do this again. This is quite the job, and I'm looking forward to being done with it, but it has been very eye-opening and given me some confidence to dig into these other trucks in here. Motor-wise, I'm usually more of a lift kit, body work, you know, wheel and tire guy, but doing the engine stuff, it's not that bad. It's just time-consuming. So this 6.7 here is going to be getting some upgrades at some point, turbos, all those things under the hood, getting rid of all that plastic stuff too. And that'll be exciting to do, and I feel a little bit better about doing it. Well, I guess we'll see after I start this thing up for the first time, see what it does. But have quite a few things to go still. Basically all the coils for the spark plugs, all the wires for those, the exhaust, the 2 bolts per side for the headers, and then the whole intake, and every plug and bolt and gasket for that. Then the front plate needs to be torqued down, the water pump. Then after that, you have harmonic balancer, which I broke. I already got a new one of those. AC compressor needs to be reattached. We've got radiator fans and shrouds and coolant pipes, battery reconnected, put oil in it. I already put the filter in it, put coolant in it. I gotta tune it because it has MDS delete and has a Diablo tuner for that. So I feel like I've gotten so much done, but there's still quite a bit to do. So y'all come back, see how this is coming along. Can't wait to get this thing on the road and confidently have this thing driving around. It may take a little bit of, back and forth, but I'm gonna try to get this thing done right the first time. Wish me luck. As y'all can see, we got this 5.7 Hemi all back together. Head gaskets, heads, intake, exhaust, all that stuff replaced. New lifters and cams, so they have no MDS anymore. This thing will run V8 all the time.